Most estate agents are obsessed with the wrong numbers. Instructions, market share, stock levels. But if you're not careful, you can build a very busy business that doesn't actually make any money. And if those numbers look healthy, we assume the business is healthy, even when it isn't. So, this is video number 3 and take number 1, and it's called The Wrong Numbers. Most estate agents are obsessed with the wrong numbers. Instructions, market share, stock levels. And on the surface, this all sounds really sensible. But if you're not careful, you can build a very busy business that doesn't actually make any money, or certainly not enough money for all your hard work. Let me give you an example. 2-bedroom flats. For years, great stock. Easy to sell. Broad demand. Ticked all the boxes, really. Today, now, in the current market, they're a nightmare. And not because the properties themselves have changed, because the market did. First-time buyer tastes have changed. They want more space. They want more bathrooms. They want outside space. And landlords, who used to be your real safety net with these buyers, have been driven out by legislation and tax changes. So what's happened? The market is flooded with supply and the demand has shifted elsewhere. I know better than most. I have a couple of 2-bedroom flats that I can't sell and will have to stay rented out for a while, which means you can have a lot of instructions that look great on a spreadsheet or the CRM, but don't actually convert into income, don't convert into money. So if you're measuring success by how many instructions you've got, you might be measuring the wrong thing entirely. Often when I talk to agents about KPIs, they immediately think targets. Monthly targets, quarterly targets, year-end targets. But that's not what KPIs are. KPIs, key performance indicators, are feedback. They tell you what's actually happening inside your business. When I explain it, I like people to think about it in terms of sitting in an aeroplane cockpit. Every dial is telling you something important. Speed, altitude, fuel, direction. And the pilot doesn't guess. They read the data constantly. In fact, they've got a co-pilot because there's too much information for one person to manage alone. Now, compare that to most estate agencies. We pick 1 or 2 numbers, usually instructions and pipeline, and we build an entire business around those numbers. And if those numbers look healthy, we assume the business is healthy, even when it isn't. Stock is one of the most misunderstood numbers in estate agency, in my meagre opinion. Agents celebrate it. We've got 120 properties on the market. Sounds pretty impressive, feels like growth, feels like momentum. But what does it actually tell you? It tells you workload. It tells you stress. It tells you how many conversations you're going to have that don't go anywhere. It tells you how many vendors you're going to have to manage who are slowly but surely losing confidence. It doesn't tell you how many of those will actually sell. It doesn't tell you how many will fall through. And it definitely doesn't tell you how profitable those instructions are, which means you can grow stock and feel like you're winning while the business underneath the surface is quietly but surely underperforming. A business with less stock that converts efficiently will outperform a business drowning in stale listings every time. The number that really matters is conversion, not just having instructions, but what actually happens to them. Because this is what measures effectiveness. How good are you really at turning the opportunities into actual income, money, profit? And most agents, if you're honest, don't properly know their numbers. There is a common denominator about successful business owners. All of them know their numbers. That is not a coincidence. Too many estate agents have got a feel for it, a rough idea, a hunch, but not a clear tracked, measured understanding. Now here's an interesting stat. The national average conversion from valuation to instruction in the UK sits at around 34%. When I first came across that, it surprised me because when I was running 17 branches in London, I assumed the average was closer to 50%. So that's how we operated. That became our standard, the line in the sand, if you like. That became the expectation. And not just for me, for everybody. We all talked about that number. My top performers were coming in at around 54%, and my lowest performers probably around 46%. We pushed hard on that, relentlessly. But here's the interesting bit. We weren't following the average. We were setting our own standards. And that standard drove performance because expectations don't just reflect results. And most agents aren't doing that. They're either guessing their numbers or quietly accepting averages instead of deciding what good actually looks like. And here's an uncomfortable question. Who actually wants to be average? Because that's what happens when you benchmark yourself against averages. You drift towards them. You justify them. End up accepting them. But nobody sets out to build an average business. So why measure yourself against one? But here's an even better number. My favourite number. Profit per instruction. Because this pulls together everything. Your fee, your cost base, your conversion rates, your time, your efficiency, everything. And this is where most businesses get exposed. Because you can have a high volume of instructions and still have a very low profit per instruction. Low fees, poor conversions, high fallout, time being wasted on deals that never complete. And yet, we still chase more and more instructions, more volume, more activity, before we fix the economics of what we're already doing, which is like pouring fuel into a car and having a hole in the tank. You'll move faster for a moment, but you're still leaking value. What's the point of growing something that isn't profitable? Or certainly not as profitable as it could be. The big lesson is simple. You don't build a better business by doing more. You build a better business by doing it better. Better conversion, better pricing, better systems, and better decisions. Because when you improve the quality of numbers, everything else follows. The pipeline becomes more predictable. The workload becomes more manageable. The team becomes more confident. And the business, most importantly, becomes more profitable. Not because you're doing more, but because you're doing it properly. Most estate agents are working hard. Most of you guys are working really, really hard. You don't need to tell me. They're focused on the wrong dashboard. And if you fix that, everything can change. Mm-hmm.